Ozark episode 1 is essentially about a man he's like some sort of an investor. Start out the episode and he knows that his wife is cheating on him. He's watching this video and he's very obsessive about it, seeing his wife fuck another man. At first it seems like that is what the main plot of the episode is going to be about, but the show takes a quick right turn where after we get introduced to his wife and his 2 kids, then see they're in this sort of like nuclear family type dynamic. We end up seeing that that he is laundering money for the Mexican cartel. And not only is he laundering money for the Mexican cartel, but he gets in quite a bit of hot water with them. One of his like investors, one of his like subordinates, I guess, who's like a big friend of his, was actually like taking money off the top. The Mexican cartel basically goes about and they're killing him one by one until Jason Bateman's character, Marty Byrne, it's revealed that he had nothing to do with the skimming money from the cartel, and he gives this plan to like launder so much more money from them in a much more safe way that like the feds won't be able to get onto as easily. All they have to do is let them go to the Ozark. And so the rest of the episode is about the rush and the drama with the family and the cartel around getting to the Ozark and convincing everyone to be on board. Hey, Marty is an interesting character because he's sort of a twist on, like a dark twist on what Jason Bateman's traditional characters from his comedies would be. And obviously because this character is, at least in archetype, so similar to characters like Michael Bluth from Arrested Development or his character from Horrible Bosses, that Jason Bateman doesn't necessarily completely transform himself, but I still found it like working for me. And it was interesting seeing these acting skills applied to a much more serious, I don't want to say like complex, but much more tension-driven story. You know, this is a character that's like sort of hyper competent. He virtually has like nerves of steel. Like there's the scene where the cartel is first fishing to find out whether or not someone is stealing from them. He basically calls them on it straight away. And at first you think that he got it wrong because he kills someone to make a point to Marty. You find out later on that he admits to Marty as they're leaving and they're finally making the rearrangements to go to the Ozark, that that he was bluffing and that Marty did correctly call him on it. The villain in this, I would say, has like quite a presence about him. He almost feels like he's at first from a different show because we first get introduced to Marty in his element in the financial sector and whatnot. And I think that adds to the tension of making it feel like Marty is really, even though he's a hyper competent like guy, he is really fucking out of his element right now. This is a guy that just comes from a different world. He's just really outclassed. He doesn't know how to deal with this. So Marty's just out of his element just physically because Marty's not a fighter. He only knows how to read people. He knows how to launder money. He knows how to work the numbers. And that gives him a good stead to deal with Del, the representative from the Mexican cartel. But ultimately Del still has the power because Del is the one who could kill him at any moment. And just the tension of their tete-a-tete is super interesting, and seeing how the other financial characters, the other characters who are stock investors, deal with Del's interrogation tactics compared to him is really interesting, and seeing how like the way that obviously Del's history of being a cartel member has obviously informed him on how to read and deal with people, but in a different way Marty's has. And it's just interesting to, I guess, see their back and forth. One thing I think I really appreciate about this pilot is that it got stuff out of the way really quickly. Like in other TV shows, I feel like they drag out someone having a secret and someone knowing someone's secret really for a long time. But this, he knows that she's cheating on him fairly early on, and she finds out that he knows that she's cheating on him fairly early on. And so it really like drives the story with the characters pretty significantly like forward in a much faster direction. Is very quickly paced. Didn't feel like we were wasting any time. The pilot plays this like really interesting game where at first it feels like the story is going to be about the tete-a-tete with him and his wife and how he's going to slowly deal with the fact that she's cheating and what is he going to do about that. And the first part of the pilot is really about that. But that makes when the story is sort of like interrupted by them getting in hot water with the cartel, that makes that feel like so much more weight, right? Because it wasn't like they were in this perfect status quo that people never are in. They're in this like messy status quo, and it feels like we're in one story. And then all of a sudden, the cartel is from this totally different world. It really makes it feel like the cartel is coming in and invading on a world that is just so unprepared for it. So one thing that I'm sort of unsure about, and it's unclear because I have watched a bit of the rest of the show, is it meant to be unclear whether or not Marty took the money? And I think when you watch further into the show, it becomes very clear that that is not the case. It's not meant to be unclear that but the way that the actor plays and the way that they linger on a certain look of his friend saying Marty had nothing to do with this, certainly it suggests like loyalty, but it also kind of suggests that maybe Marty did have something to do with it, because the cartel member is sort of unsure, and he only because he believes in Marty's plan, and he can see that Marty might be able to pull off like laundering money in the Ozark, where there's barely any business, and it's such a long shot. But if you can do it, it's so like advantageous for them because the police aren't looking there. Just trying to draw out the tension like the show does. What was my point again? Fuck. Oh, yeah. The look his friend gives him. It almost made me wonder whether or not Marty really did have something to do with it, but was just playing it better than the rest of them. There's a moment towards the end of the show that kind of shows me that there's a lot I think this show is taking from Breaking Bad and these other shows like Marty's competence, but it's obviously different in the sense that maybe I'm influenced by the fact that I have seen other parts of the show. I don't think Marty is ever going to become like a violent person in the show in the way that Walter White is not going to make a transition like Walter White does, or a transition like the way that, or like become what Dexter already is at the start of his show. I think this is an anti-hero story of someone that's always going to be a criminal through negotiation and through business savvy, which still has got a lot of places to go. And I think that's an interesting way to make it so that he stands out from other characters. And also something that makes him stand out is that he loves his family pretty much and really isn't like keeping that much from with them, at least emotionally. No more than I think most people are keeping from their kids, even though obviously he's involved with criminals. He's not got this like dark serial killer urge like Dexter that he's hiding from the loved ones in his life. He's hiding the fact that he resents his wife for cheating on him, which is, sad to say, probably pretty normal for a lot of people. Something else that separates him is that I think that unlike Walter, obviously Walter in Breaking Bad cared about his family to a degree, I think that he legitimately does care about his family, and especially now that his criminal dealings have turned south, I think he much more cares about taking care of his family than he does about making money. Otherwise, he could have just abandoned his family like Walter did when things got tough at certain points in Breaking Bad. And you see like sort of there's a moment where this guy has again like been very stoic, very maybe stutters a little bit here and there, but ultimately kind of had been keeping it together pretty much. And then there's a moment at the end of the pilot where he like goes to a place by himself and he starts to cry. And you can see that he really is like remorseful already in the first episode about what he did. And I think that's going to be a trend, that he really is remorseful in a way that Dexter and Walter White never quite were. At least, again, with Walter, it's sort of with both of those characters, there's sort of nuance, but they ultimately were more driven by their ego and by their desire to what they're getting out of doing bad things than by their family. I really think that's the opposite with this character. So obviously the family is going to be a big part of this show, and we don't really get too much brought in with them, but I think that they're like reasonably interesting characters, and I legitimately like, well, I can't say I like the wife. I don't really like the wife yet. I think that she gets better later on. And the kids, there's really nothing to do with them. But I think that that works because we're seeing things mostly from his perspective. And of course the wife's going to be unlikable from his perspective because she's fucking cheating on him. I really like the cinematography in this. There's a real, like, again, it adds to like that real sense of like quiet and tension as they're negotiating, and the threat of violence is held over them. I think that's another thing that makes this different from those other shows is that this is a guy who will never be the tough guy in the room in a traditional sense, I don't think. And so he's always, when he's in these rooms with these criminals, he's always going to be at the mercy of what he can talk them into. And so there's a lot of, like them waiting and seeing how they've reacted to something you said, seeing the tension as they've dropped a bomb of like they're about to kill someone or they have killed someone. I think that is added to like the dark color palette that makes the show seem very gritty. There's a lot of like dark blue in the show. There's like these like sort of long shots that create like sort of distance that makes the characters seem like powerless. And I think that that works for most of the shots, except for one where Marty is talking to a private investigator. That is obviously the reason he found out about his wife cheating on him. And I think maybe that's the only one. I was going to say another one. One way I think this show could set itself apart from other like anti-hero crime shows is to make the kids like actually like a part of the narrative. Not to say, again, like that like Walter Jr., let's say in Breaking Bad, or the kids in Dexter weren't characters at points, but they were at most like just stock kid characters, and at best like side characters. But to make like the kid characters in this show full-on characters, even though again like I'm generally not drawn towards kid characters in things, but I think that in this show it could work because this is such a show about a family man, and I think he's going to be, I think to show that completely, you have got to show like the kid's perspective of things so it can flesh out like his role as like a father and stuff. But overall, the show is a good entry in the anti-hero crime drama genre. It's got a lot of depth to it. It has unique tension. It's really good at playing with power dynamics. I'd recommend it. I'd give the first episode an 8 out of 10.